Hey, TDK here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review we take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Z or Z, depending on where you live, Fold 3, Samsung's latest foldable phone that looks to be better than its predecessors. The old adage says that it's third time's a charm. Whether that is or not for Samsung's third attempt at a foldable device like this, well, that remains to be seen, because I think it's going to be over time that we see really where this device goes, or at least where its form factor goes. And now, the Galaxy Z Fold3 is an interesting concept that is definitely getting better, especially if you have used either the previous two devices like I have. If you're new to the phone, and those are really the people that Samsung is trying to court here, you may find that it's unique, innovative, interesting, but is it really useful and usable? That was really the question I went into reviewing this with, and I had also done the same thing with the previous two models, because really, as a somewhat unproven design, the real thing is, how useful is this going to be for the average person who already has a phone? Phones do generally the same things for the most part, some things better than others, but when it comes to a different form factor, a different design, you also have to look at the usability side of things. In this case, we have a foldable phone with a 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED display here, which is known as the cover screen, and then you fold it out and you have what is called the main screen. Of course, this screen here is what everybody's going to be talking about, or what everybody's looking at when it comes to this device. 7.6-inch dynamic AMOLED, infinity flex display, as Samsung calls it. This is definitely better glass than the previous models. There is Gorilla Glass Victus for extra safety and protection here, but I just like the way it feels too. It doesn't feel quite as plasticky as the previous ones did. It feels a little more glassy, for lack of a better term. And I like also that it has the 120 Hz refresh rate, so everything just feels smooth when you're navigating the interface. And because you're obviously, with a screen this size, you're gonna be swiping and tapping and doing all kinds of things to move around. That extra fluidity is always nice to see. I'm going to make a quick point about the front-facing camera that is on the main screen. This is the one that Samsung is trying to disguise by making it kind of hidden underneath. It's not completely hidden. You will see the cutout a little bit, but it tries to match the colors that are on the screen at all times. It kind of looks like, I don't know, I guess if you're drawing like shutters on a window, it kind of looks something like that. So it's obvious. I can't say it's not, but it's kind of cool that at least they're trying to do something there. I just think that there's definitely room to improve on that. Naturally, when we're talking about a screen of this size, we have to look at the multitasking side of it, really, because that is the main feature here. What I do like is that Samsung at least made that easier. So in the past, when you wanted to bring in apps to multitask, it was a process that really wasn't all that simplistic. You needed to make it, for lack of a better term, kind of foolproof or idiot-proof. And in this case, when you just you swipe in the pane on the right side, as I'm here, you just kind of drag and drop an app in, and you can do it with up to 3 apps. Very, very cool, especially if those 3 apps, you're using them for some, like for example, I've looked up stuff on a map at the same time, reading about it on a web browser, and then messaging a friend at the same time also. So kind of just, we're talking about a place, we're looking at, different things, where to go, what to do, and I can basically look at those 3 apps at the same time, which of course can't really do on other phones. So from that standpoint, from a productivity standpoint, whether it is, just to entertain yourself or actually to get work done, that is something that I think is useful and comes in handy. You could also do split screen. This I actually like more so. I like the idea of having 2 apps kind of side by side. So I can read from 2 different browsers, for example, about the same topic, or I can watch a sporting event on one and then message or tweet about it maybe on the other screen. Even if I'm doing something work related, so if I'm doing research for a story that I want to write about, I can also research a number of different ways. So I can look up an app that might be related to a story, and at the same time have a browser in the other screen. So from the multitasking standpoint, yeah, Samsung's making a case that this kind of form factor can work. It needs to be a little more seamless, and apps need to be, I guess, more optimized for it, but you can force that. So even if you are just using the whole screen just on its own, and you're finding, wait a second, I'm launching this app, but why is it only on one side of the display? You can actually force that. Go into the settings, go under labs, and you can actually force every app that you open to essentially cover the whole display on its own. Couple of quick notes. Now, the S Pen does work on the Fold 3, but not just any S Pen. So if you're gonna take one or just cannibalize one from an old Galaxy Note and use it here, it's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna recognize that pen. Only two types of S Pens work on this. It is the Fold Edition and the S Pen Pro. The Fold Edition is exclusive to this device. It'll only work with it, but it doesn't have Bluetooth. So if you're looking for Air actions, that model won't work. That's where the S Pen Pro comes in, which has the Bluetooth. So you can use Air actions like, you're pressing the button to basically snap a photo without even touching the phone, things like that. The pen works pretty much the same way on this screen as it does, I would say, even as the S21 Ultra, we saw earlier this year, which also was the first of the S line to support the S Pen. Kind of the same experience here. I found that, the pen worked pretty well, pretty smooth. Because of that crease in the middle of the screen here, so like because you notice that there's that crease there, that can sometimes mess with the way you write on the screen. I think it's something that you might get used to, but then again, if you don't, it could be something that kind of grates on you a little bit. Either way, at least the pen support is there, and when you have a screen this size, you kind of need that. The other thing that I find interesting here is on the camera side. So what Samsung did here is, despite the fact this is a premium device, it did not put its best cameras in here. So if you're expecting photos along the same lines as the S21 Ultra, not gonna happen. Instead, the triple camera array in the rear is actually made up of the S21 and S21 Plus cameras. So the sensors are largely the same, more or less, from those two phones, which means that the photos are gonna be fine, but they're not gonna be exceptional. So some of the examples that I got kind of show that. Like when I looked at them and I worked on some of them even after to edit them and see what I could do, I noticed a lot of similarity shots that I got with the S21 and S21 Plus. So from that standpoint, again, not that you're going to get bad shots, you can get very good photos, but certainly not premium shots that are going to, be the best in the business, so to speak. So from that standpoint, the camera is a bit surprising, but there is always a caveat with something like this, and it comes down to, well, how you actually kind of place the phone. What I mean by that is that because it bends and it folds, you can actually prop it up and shoot pretty much anything from any angle. So if you wanted to shoot some, let's say you want to use the ultra-wide camera, you want to shoot something from a really low worm's eye view, and just kind of get a majestic shot, you could from an angle that would otherwise be difficult to pull off if you didn't have this type of form factor. So even like if you have it standing up, sort of propped up like this, you can also shoot interesting things that way too. So a selfie, for example, you wouldn't necessarily need anybody to hold the phone if you have a flat surface to hold it on. The other thing is selfies, where even though there are two front-facing cameras, both on the cover screen and on the main screen, you could technically also just use the rear cameras as well. So like if you were to shoot like this, for example, I'm not going to demonstrate it here, but if you shoot it like this, you will actually see a preview show up here on the cover screen. So you're better able to frame yourself or a group of people if you're with them. I mentioned earlier a little bit about the build quality, and I just want to touch on that a little bit because I think it factors into the last parts that I want to talk about, which is that, the hinge is great. There's a nice construction to the body here. So it feels like a hefty device. Obviously, it's going to be heavier than anything else. And I like that there's some durability, some water resistance, wireless charging. There's plenty here to like as far as the way the phone has been designed. The thing is, though, is that when you have everything going on here the way you do, you also have to sacrifice some battery life. 4,400 milliamps is pretty good, but the way that it's built in here is that, again, you're powering two screens, one of which is oversized for a phone, and what it comes down to is that you're not going to get the best battery life. Even if you do things to offset that, I don't know that it's going to make that much of a difference. Again, because it also depends on how much you're using the main screen, how much you're using the cover screen, what kind of apps you're using, video, not video, 5G or not 5G, the 120 hertz refresh rate, even though it is adaptive. All of those things can factor in because they would on any other phone anyway, but here again, because you're using two displays, it's not going to last long. I found when I used it, I had to, especially on heavy days where I was using it a lot, I absolutely had to charge at the end of the night, or at the end of the day even in some cases, especially if there was a lot of video or streaming, or if I was using the camera a lot, which I tend to do. So don't expect amazing battery life. It's not horrible, but it's going to be really, really average. So I'm just going to close off with some final thoughts. This is not a phone that I think people generally need. This is the kind of phone that you want because you find it cool or you think that will be useful to you. Whether or not it would be, I don't know. I can't say. For me personally, I wouldn't need this phone necessarily, although I kind of like that I, in a sense, have a tablet along with a phone here. I didn't always like the thickness, when it's folded. I didn't necessarily like the weight all the time. And just because I had the large display, it didn't mean that I always needed all that real estate. I personally find the Galaxy Z Flip3, the foldable phone that flips out like an old flip phone, that to me is a little bit more on the usable side because it's just emulating the same form factor we've all known for years, but just folding it in half. This is a different concept. This is taking essentially two phones and putting them together with a hinge in the middle. I mean, it's cool, sure, there's a novelty to it, no question about it. There aren't really too many phones, if at all, that are like this, that are currently out on the market. And yes, this one costs less than the previous two did, but at the same time, I have to caution that if you're gonna go with this, go with it ideally after looking at it first. Go to a store, see it, touch it, kind of get an idea of what it is you're getting into. Because if you find that the screen is cool and that, hey, look, I like the multitasking, that's great. But I have a feeling after you really start to kind of play around with it, you'll make a decision one way or the other. Maybe you'll be into it, or maybe you'll feel like, you know what, maybe this isn't the right time. And that's my review of the Samsung Galaxy Fold 3. For the Best Buy blog, I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.